A white police officer who spent his entire career intimidating, humiliating, and oppressing black people without ever facing consequences. Until one trial changed everything. Inside that courtroom, he mocked a black woman, unaware that she was the very person with the power to destroy his life. And this time, there was no one left to protect him. Thank you for being here. If you appreciate meaningful stories like this, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We'll have another powerful story for you tomorrow. Darren Cole stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of his freshly pressed uniform. The polished badge gleamed on his chest, a symbol of power he had grown addicted to over the years. Being in control, giving orders, watching people obey out of fear, that was what drove him every single day. That he didn't think of himself as a racist. In his mind, he was just doing his job. He believed black people were more likely to be criminals, so he stayed on guard. If they aren't guilty today, he used to say, they'll be guilty tomorrow. For over a decade, Darren patrolled Riverside Heights, a neighborhood he thought of as a war zone. He stopped cars without cause, harassed teenagers, fabricated reports, and used unnecessary force. His colleagues did the same. They covered for each other, lied in court, and destroyed evidence. No one questioned them. No one ever faced punishment. Until now, for the first time, Darren sat in court as a defendant. A black family had filed a lawsuit, accusing him of assaulting their son without provocation. Darren wasn't worried. He'd seen these cases before. They never won. He thought back to the night it happened. 3 months earlier, he was patrolling with his partner when they saw a group of black teens hanging out in front of a convenience store. Darren stopped the car and got out. "Move along," he ordered. Most of them left without a word. But one boy, Jordan Matthews, didn't move. He stood there and calmly asked, "What did I do wrong?" That question sent Darren into a rage. Without hesitation, he grabbed Jordan's hoodie, slammed him to the pavement, and twisted his arms behind his back. "You don't get to ask questions," Darren snapped. "When I say go, you go," Jordan cried out. "I didn't do anything. You're hurting me." His pleas didn't matter. To Darren, it was just another day on the job. What he didn't realize was that someone was filming. A bystander had captured the entire encounter on video. Every brutal second. By the next day, the video was everywhere. It was clear Jordan hadn't posed a threat. Darren's excessive force was on full display. Public outrage exploded. Protests gathered outside the station. And Jordan's family decided to sue. Even as he walked into court, Darren smirked. He believed the system would protect him, like it always had. He glanced around the room and sneered at the human rights activists in the back row, at Jordan's grieving parents. None of them scared him, but then he noticed her. A black woman sat in the front row, perfectly still. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She was calm, too calm. And she was watching him, not with rage, not with disgust, but with something else entirely. Darren didn't know what it was, but it made him uncomfortable. He nudged his lawyer. "Who's that?" His lawyer glanced her way and shook his head. "I don't know." Darren laughed under his breath. Probably just another activist. But he couldn't shake her stare. It was as if she could see through him. The trial began. The plaintiff's lawyer stood and made his case. On the screen, the courtroom watched the video of Darren slamming Jordan to the ground. Gasps echoed as Jordan's cries played over the speakers. His mother clutched her husband's hand, fighting back tears. Darren leaned back, arms crossed. He'd seen videos like this before. He wasn't worried. The media always twisted things. Cops like him didn't get punished, but that woman in the front row never looked away. As the day went on, Darren's irritation grew. Finally, he raised his voice. "What's the matter? You one of those anti-cop types?" The room went silent. All eyes turned to the woman, but she said nothing. She simply stared, frustrated. Darren slammed his hand on the table. Still no reaction. His lawyer leaned in. "Calm down," he whispered, but Darren couldn't. "You got something to say?" he snapped. The woman finally spoke. Her voice was low, calm, and deliberate. "Officer Darren Cole, I suggest you focus on the trial." Darren stiffened. She knew his name. "How?" he demanded. "Who are you?" She didn't answer. She turned her gaze to the judge. The judge cleared his throat. Officer Cole, that woman is Dr. Veronica Hale, Inspector General of the United States Department of Justice. The room froze. Veronica Hale. Darren had heard of her. Every dirty cop had. She was the one who exposed corrupt departments, the one who sent cops to prison. And now she was here, watching him. The plaintiff's lawyer added, Dr. Hale has been observing Officer Cole for months. Darren felt the air leave his lungs. His lawyer stayed silent. His fellow officers refused to look at him. He was completely alone. Veronica Hale stood and addressed the court. I've seen enough. A federal investigation into Officer Cole's conduct will begin immediately. The next morning, Darren was suspended, ordered to turn in his badge and weapon. This isn't over, Darren told himself. But it was. Within days, headlines across the country covered the story. Videos from years past surfaced. Victims came forward. One by one, they told their stories. Linda Harris wept on national news, describing how Darren beat her son during a traffic stop. Michael Johnson, a respected schoolteacher, told reporters how Darren accused him of having a weapon, then shoved a gun in his face. Johnson's voice trembled as he said, I thought I was going to die. More victims came forward. Dozens of them. Darren's old colleagues distanced themselves. At the station, they avoided him. Some officers who once backed him now called him a disgrace. 1 month later, Darren sat in a gray jumpsuit at his federal trial. He wasn't a cop anymore, just another criminal facing judgment. Veronica Hale sat in the front row, silent and calm. She didn't need to speak. His actions had spoken loud enough. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence, videos, reports, witness testimonies. Darren had abused his power, fabricated charges, assaulted innocent people, and covered it up for years at last. The judge delivered the sentence. Darren Cole, you are sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. Darren's knees buckled. He begged for mercy. He promised to change. Please, he cried. I'm sorry. Don't send me to prison. But no one listened. Veronica Hale stood and left without a word. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions as Darren was led away in handcuffs. Do you regret it, Cole? Any message for your victims? Darren said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Inside the transport van, Darren glanced out the window one last time. He saw Veronica Hale step into her car. She didn't even look in his direction, and she didn't need to. Justice had finally caught up with Darren Cole, and no one could save him now. Thank you for listening to this story. If it resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Tomorrow, we'll bring you another powerful and meaningful story.